Hello, residents of Scranton. My name is Desi Navarro. I'm with Answer Advisory. We are the consulting firm that the City of Scranton has hired to help them with their American Rescue Plan Act spending plan. And as part of their American Rescue Plan Act spending plan, they do have a new program they're launching with Scranton Area Community Foundation as the program subrecipient for disaster recovery individual assistance. This presentation is going to walk you through that grant program, the specifics, eligibility requirements, the application process, and the timeline. So we're excited to present this to you all, and we'll get into the presentation on the next slide. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk through the objective of the presentation. I'm going to give a very quick overview of the American Rescue Plan Act and specifically the Interim Final Rule 2023. Then we're going to talk through the funding opportunity, subrecipient versus beneficiary. We're going to go through those terms and make sure that everybody is understanding the role that SAF is playing as the subrecipient, and then the role that the residents would be playing as the beneficiaries. And then we'll go through some eligibility requirements for the beneficiaries or for residents as part of this program. Then we'll talk about costs. What are eligible costs versus ineligible costs under this program? We'll talk through a damage assessment and prioritization process and how these grant applications will be reviewed. And then SAF is going to take us through detailed information on how to apply. And then we'll do a quick recap of what are the summary of the required documents you need to submit with your application, make sure that everybody understands what those are. And then we'll finalize the presentation here with a timeline and then field any questions we might have. So the objective, it's really three parts. One is to provide an overview of the city's disaster recovery individual assistance program. The second would be to define eligible beneficiaries, or again, residents, and eligible uses of funding if awarded. And then lastly, we will demonstrate how applicants can apply, and SAF will take us through that. So a quick overview of the American Rescue Plan Act. About $1.9 trillion came down through this program back in 2021. Of that 1.9 trillion, 365 billion went to state and local governments. And of that 365 billion, 68.7 million went to the city of Scranton. So for the last couple of years, we've been operating under what's called the final rule, which has explicit categories and eligible uses where these dollars can and can't be used. But the most important one for today's presentation is actually what's called the interim final rule, which was just published in August, which now gives these state local governments additional flexibility on how these funds can be used. Obviously, for us here and for our conversation purposes, we're going to really focus in on disaster relief mitigation and the details of this program and how the city has set this up with the Scranton Area Community Foundation. So before we get into more explicit details, we're going to first start with some definitions. There is a guidance document that is posted online. You can find that on the city's website. It is going to have some terms in there like recipient, subrecipient, beneficiary. So it's important to make sure that we all understand who these different individuals or organizations are and what role they play. So the City of Scranton is the recipient of these funds. They were the recipient that was awarded the total $68.7 million from Treasury. And as part of that, they can set up programs or projects that are funded either directly to beneficiaries or through what are called subrecipients. In this case, Scranton Area Community Foundation is the subrecipient of the program, which means that they have some additional tasks and responsibilities that they take on in terms of managing this program on behalf of the city. So subsequent to that, we've got beneficiaries. So beneficiaries are the residents that are going to be the direct benefits of funds. So they're going to receive these funds through SAF. There will be a grant agreement that goes along with that. But the key beneficiary qualifications are: one, you have to be a resident in Scranton, living in Scranton, and you must have been impacted by the flooding disaster that occurred on September 9th, 2023. This program is specific to that disaster event, and so we got to make sure that that stays paramount here throughout the program. Looking for residents that have registered with the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. If you haven't registered, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't qualify, but it is helpful. So we will be cross-checking that list and just confirming who is currently on that list. It's also key here that in order to be eligible, any of the losses that you've incurred due to that flooding event on September 9th cannot have been made financially whole through other funding sources, which would include insurance claims or payouts, PEMA funding, SBA funding, or other forms of federal or state assistance. So if you did go through the event, you had flooding damage, you put in an insurance claim, and insurance has now covered those costs, you are considered to have had needs met, and this program would no longer be eligible for you to apply to. But if that's not the case, or if you did receive maybe some insurance funding, but it didn't fully meet the need, whatever is currently left over, that delta, that could still be eligible for funding through this program. And then lastly, residents that can provide evidence of cost expenditures related to this disaster. That is also a key requirement. So types of eligible costs. So it's really broken down into 5 categories here. On the left-hand side, you'll see it categorized by topic. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a couple of bullet points that further detail what some of those costs may look like. The first would be homeowner property repairs. So things like damage to plumbing or septic systems, maybe burst pipes, cracked walls, things of that sort. The second would be homeowner appliance repairs or replacements. So if you had flood damaged furnaces, AC units, or other kitchen appliances, that could be an eligible cost submission as well. Clearing out interior and exterior debris. So, any costs related to removing water and the debris and the damaged materials that may have built up in your basement or your front yard due to the disaster, costs paid to contractors that maybe performed some flood restoration measures during the event. Those would be eligible cost expenditures. The fourth is insurance deductibles. So you could submit to have that deductible covered through this program. You're going to have to provide proof of insurance, proof of claim submission, and proof of the deductible amount and the payment that was made there. But that could be an eligible cost. And then certain uninsured personal property losses that qualify as basic needs. So evidence of costs that were maybe spent on replacing or repairing some furniture, computers, electronics, or other home office equipment. Ineligible costs. So important that we cover this as well. So we have to be very clear that damages, home repairs, or personal property replacement that it was not directly associated with the flooding event that occurred on September 9th are not eligible for this program. In addition to that, costs associated with replacing expendable household items, including food items, are not eligible. And then general landscaping repairs or yard replacements, also not eligible. There is a damage assessment component to the application. It's really broken down into the FEMA categories and the way that they classify damage. So we've really modeled this program after that. It's broken down into 5 key categories, the first being affected, and then it transitions to minor, major, destroyed, and inaccessible. You'll see here in the middle column, and this is all included in the guidance document as well. So if you want to take time with it and really digest it, you can download that off the city's website and read through it in more detail. But the water level in that center column is kind of a good gauge to start with to identify what box you might fall within. It's going to identify, how high was the water in your residence on September 9th, and that may help you determine, what level of damage you might fall within. But then if you go further to the right-hand side of that table, you'll see more explicit descriptions of what a, minor damage or a major damaged home might look like. So I'm not going to walk through all of these in detail, but it is something that as you're thinking about your application and submitting your application, being able to assess and determine where you fit in these categories and submitting, if you have 1 or 2 photos of your residents during that time as well, submitting and uploading that with your application. So our grant reviewers can take a look at your assessed damage and some photos and match the 2 up and confirm that they're reasonably related there. Another quick note on this table, this is the conventional guidance for a conventionally built home in the guideline document as well. If you've got a manufactured home, the way that FEMA describes these 5 categories is a little bit different. So there is an Appendix A to the guidance document. You only need that if you're living in a manufactured home, but go ahead and reference that with your application to determine your level of damage in that instance. Okay, so scoring and prioritization. So priority funding will be based on the following criteria. First, it'll be based on uninsured or underinsured applicants, really trying to prioritize those uninsured applicants first, right? So this program is really designed to help those and benefit as many people as possible. But we know that there are some people that are either underinsured or not insured at all, and maybe having the biggest exposure right now on the cost side. So really trying to help those folks out as much as possible. Level of damage will also be considered as well. So if your home has been damaged to a greater extent maybe than another property that was damaged a little less so. There will be a little priority given to those examples. And then the last is if you can provide proof of expenditure with your grant application. So as with all of these programs for the American Rescue Plan Act, there is auditing requirements and there are compliance requirements, and a lot of it has to do with providing proof of expenditures and making sure that everything is in line from a cost standpoint. So looking for applicants to really be able to provide those, whether that be through receipts or invoices, maybe it's an insurance estimate, maybe it's a contractor estimate, anything to substantiate those costs that were expended. Please include those with your grant application. The last note here is that complete and eligible applications will be reviewed and prioritized for funding on a first come, first served basis until the full program allocation amount of $500,000 is met. So Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk us through the how to apply.
All right, thank you, Desi. So I'm Frank Caputo. I'm with the Scranton Area Community Foundation. We are the subrecipient of this award. So we're helping the City of Scranton to carry out the actual process of accepting and reviewing these grants. So our entire grant application process for this program will be through our grant management portal. It can be accessed at www.safdn.org/flood. There's also an email address there, grants@safdn.org. If you have any questions about how the grant portal or application works. So here's kind of a walkthrough of the flow of how the application process works. There's a couple forms, and we've set it up this way for ease of use so that applicants we can see if they're eligible before we go ahead and have all of the documents submitted. So the first point here, applicants will submit what's called an eligibility questionnaire. So once that's submitted, Scranton Area Community Foundation and city staff will review that for initial eligibility, at which point, if the applicant is deemed eligible, we'll reach out to them and they'll be invited to submit their further documentation. So that would be these photos that document the damage, as well as proof of insurance claims if those have been made, receipts, other proofs of expenditures. There's a full list of those that we'll review in a bit. Then once all of that documentation is submitted, the SAF staff and city will review those again to make sure that's complete, at which point, if we still need more information from the applicant, we'll reach out and work with them to get all of that, which is the next point here. At any time during the application review process, we might reach out to you, ask for additional information or to revise or clarify something in the application. And then finally, complete and eligible applicants who turned in all of those materials, they'll be prioritized using the prioritization that Desi mentioned before and accepted for the grant award. And I also just really quickly want to go through, when you access the login of our website, this is what it looks like, the login screen. New applicants are going to select create new account, put in their address, create an account, at which point they'll be able to apply. So they're going to see this on the apply screen, the City of Scranton Disaster Recovery Individual Assistance Program, which has a breakdown of all the information that we covered here, as well as a link to the full program guidelines. Applicant can click on apply. And this is the eligibility questionnaire. But this is that first stage of entering your information to help us determine whether or not the applicant is eligible, and then that will be submitted for review.
Thank you, Frank. So as you go through the application in SAF's portal, you'll find that it's broken up into, as Frank mentioned, that submission of a letter of intent, completing your application, which does include a confirmation of registration with PEMA. Again, I just want to reiterate that isn't going to make you eligible or ineligible. We are just trying to assess how many folks and applicants are actually currently registered with PEMA. They will require for you to click what level of damage your home has sustained and include a couple of photos of that. And then you will, with your application, have to identify different types of insurance coverage that you may currently have, or had at the time of the disaster. That may include homeowners, renters, could include a flood policy, maybe content insurance, anything like that. You'll need to disclose that as part of your application. And then lastly, you'll find that there is a place for you in your application to also disclose any alternate sources of funding that have been provided to date in relation to that disaster. So that, again, as I mentioned, could include insurance payouts or claims that have been submitted there, or any other sources of funding that you may have received related to that event at the time of your application. And then once you complete that, you will be prompted to upload documents so that those can be reviewed and verified as well. The first is going to be a proof of address document. So what we're looking for here is a lease or mortgage agreement. Want to understand if you're a renter or if you're a homeowner. So if you're a renter, we're looking for a lease agreement. If you're a homeowner, looking for your mortgage agreement to just verify your status as well as your address. Item number 2 would be a valid government issued ID. So your driver's license would suffice, but if you want to provide a passport or anything else like that, that's also sufficient. You'll be required to complete a conflict of interest form. It's typical standard policy for the city and for SAF. It's a 1-page form. Insurance verification. So this is going to be a little bit different depending on your unique status in your application. If you only have one type of policy, or one sort of coverage, insurance coverage, obviously provide that, as well as any evidence of claim submissions and responses to your claim submissions. So if you've been approved, if you've been denied, whatever that might be. And again, you're going to include that for the different policies that you currently hold related to that residence, the homeowner, the renter, the flood, the content, or anything else. And then lastly, in the application, you will see a beneficiary funds request form. It's really broken down into three categories. One is the identification and evidence of the total cost impacts you've sustained. In that form, you'll see a table. There's an example already populated in there for you, so you can see how to fill it out. But you're just going to identify your cost impacts. Maybe it's a couple of different contractor invoices or receipts. Maybe it's an estimate from your insurance company on the level of damage sustained. Whatever that is, whatever you can back up with the documentation, you're going to put that into that table. The second page then is you're going to see that duplication of benefit disclosure form where you're going to line item out those different sources or insurance dollars that you've claimed or received at this point at the time of application. And then the last page is just a simple 1-page income self-attestation form. The city is collecting income information for its entire ARPA program. A lot of it because it's required. ARPA, our American Rescue Plan Act, is really meant to serve lower moderate income folks. That is not a specific requirement of this program, but it is an overarching requirement for their entire program. So they're collecting this data on every project or program as they move forward. So it's a quick 1-page form. Go ahead and fill that out and submit that as well. And then lastly, the grant program timeline. So applications will go live on Monday, October 30th, and then those will be open and remain open until December 31st, 2023. During that time, that email address that Frank had mentioned before is a technical help email address. So if you have questions about a form or you're having issues maybe creating a login or uploading a document, whatever it is, whatever it might be, if you email that email address, they'll be able to get back to you and help you through whatever issues you may have. The city and SAF will begin reviewing applications as soon as they come in and as soon as they're fully complete. So for those people that may be on it and they submit it on October 30th, we'll start that application review period then, but it'll just be a rolling review as they come in all the way through December 31st. The city does have a couple of application outreach events planned between the 31st and November 3rd. So those are listed there. There is going to be one on Tuesday, October 31st, between 1 and 5 p.m. at Novembrino Park. They'll do another one on Wednesday, same location, Novembrino. And then Thursday, they're going to go over to the Weston Fieldhouse, and they're going to host that session from 2 to 6. And then on Friday at the Weston Fieldhouse, they'll do another session in the AM between 8 and 12. And then after the review period is complete, the deadline is passed, then the city and SAF will go through final award determinations and notify those folks of where they sit and where they stand in terms of the program. So I believe that takes us to the end here. So I want to thank everybody for your time. If you're watching this webinar, hopefully it's helpful. Again, would point you to SAF's portal where the information on all of the grant requirements and the guidance document is posted. That same information is also posted on the City of Scranton's website. So if you just Google City of Scranton and you go to their ARPA splash page, you'll see it located there as well. But we really looking forward to this program and getting these dollars out very quickly to those folks that were impacted here to the greatest extent possible. We know you guys need it. So thanks again for attending, and we look forward to seeing your application.
Yeah, and I would just like to reiterate that our grant portal can be found by going to www.safdn.org/flood, or just Googling Scranton Area Community Foundation. On our website, there'll be a banner that will direct you to that. And if you need technical assistance with the application, you can email grants@safdn.org, and that will be on our website as well.